Stephen Miller might be the most morally reprehensible member of Donald Trump's administration, but it's not the only title that he holds in that White House. He's also the weirdest and most uncomfortable. And it's clearly not just me who believes that. Donald Trump does as well. And a new leaked report details just how much he thinks that and actually says it as well. We are going to get into the humiliation of Stephen Miller as he's also humiliated by his failing immigration agenda. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, I want to start on that immigration agenda, which was called out for its failures by Senator Alex Padilla right here.
It is astonishing that it's like we're the frog in a boiling pot of water and the heat just keeps getting turned up and we don't realize, a lot of us, what's happening.
Yeah. So, a couple of pieces here. Number one, it's always easy to put this back in perspective if you flip the question around. Imagine if President Biden did something that Donald Trump did. What would Republicans say then? Right? A president of the United States suggesting, no, that governor, that mayor, no doubt we have to liberate that city. I mean, that's exactly the rhetoric that compelled me to speak at the press conference last week, not just as a senator, but as an American, number one. Number two, when they suggested that the mission of the military was to go in and do the liberty, that is not what Marines are trained to do. That is not what they can fight wars overseas, but you don't use them against your own people. And so that was my appeal to my colleagues. Is this the precedent that we're saying? Are you okay with this? Because I'm not. This is not normal, and we should not treat it as normal.
So, Senator, where do you see things now? How do we move from your incident and the one we saw today with Brad Lander, and who himself noted that he was just there to accompany defendants and advocate for a due process for those defendants? You were in that federal building there again to take care of other business, but happened to have the secretary down the hall and say, "Okay, let me go stop in and listen," and then wanted to address what was being said and was summarily handcuffed out of the building. How do we move forward from here? Because my sense is there's only one ear open to this. The other ear is shut. As you noted at the beginning with your first comments that, a handful of Republicans showed up. But to be clear, whether it is the assassination of state officials in Missouri or Minnesota, or the arrest of a United States senator, there is no compelling argument from the other side to say this is not who we are. This should not stand. Even though it's happening with Trump, you don't have to call him out if you don't want to, but at least address the moment in front of us.
So I think there's a couple of things. First of all, not surprised because let's just do a little play-by-play. On Thursday, what happened to me. Come Friday, there was an announcement that the president was directing DHS to let up on enforcement in hotels and agricultural fields and restaurants. And we thought, oh, maybe there's a glimmer here. Maybe there's a baby step in the right direction. Oh, by Friday, that was all gone.
Right.
Like, no. Not only are we restoring that, we're doubling down in blue cities is what he said. So the clear partisan political attack, he's saying the quiet part out loud. And so while we try to appeal to our Republican colleagues, we know that what will really move them is the people.
Donald Trump has said again and again that he thinks immigration was the single most important issue in getting him reelected, that this, above all else, is what he could find public support in. And polling shows that in many ways to be true. But Donald Trump has squandered whatever support he had for his disgusting illegal immigration attack by going as far as he possibly could in breaking the law, at the instruction of Stephen Miller, a guy who said just a few weeks ago that he wanted to suspend habeas corpus, so of course Donald Trump could be the dictator on day one that he promised. And he's been forever raising the stakes since then with his attack on LA, the National Guard, sending in ICE, sending in Marines. It has all backfired as Trump's immigration plan increasingly becomes unpopular. And it is for that failure, along with just how uncomfortable he makes us all, why Donald Trump is not too happy with Stephen Miller. And I want to get into that right here. Trump has a nasty secret nickname for Stephen Miller, biographer reveals. Donald Trump has a less than flattering nickname for Stephen Miller, his White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Weird Stephen. The typically juvenile nickname Trump gave one of his most loyal allies and the architect behind many of his hardline immigration policies was revealed by biographer Michael Wolff on the Daily Beast podcast. There is awareness that Stephen Miller is a problem, Wolff said, and even Trump calls him Weird Stephen because he is weird. By the way, I mean, you can't spend a moment with him and not say, ugh, something's off there. When host Joanna Coles pressed him on why Miller earned the nickname, Wolff explained, he doesn't make eye contact, and then he talks to you in this monotone voice, and it feels very revvy. You know, the engine of his voice keeps going, and you kind of step back. Wolff was addressing speculation over whether Miller might fall out of favor if Donald Trump's sweeping immigration plans fall flat. Miller has been pushing immigration and customs enforcement to detain at least 3,000 migrants a day as a part of Donald Trump's pledge to carry out the largest mass deportation effort in U.S. history. But Trump has already shown signs of softening on Miller's hardline approach. Last week, he floated possible exemptions for farm and hotel workers, industries that rely heavily on migrant labor, which Miller fiercely fought against. Wolff said that Trump's public and explosive fallout with Elon Musk soon after the tech billionaire left his Department of Government Efficiency role is a sign of what happens if one of the president's inner circle gains too much power and influence. Trump, who is lazy, lets other people be in charge until they're perceived as being in charge. Then they're no longer in charge, Wolff said. Responding to the nickname claims, a White House spokesperson told the Daily Beast that Michael Wolff, as they always say, is a lying sack of hurt and has been proven to be a fraud. He routinely fabricates stories originating from his sick and warped imagination, only possible because he has a severe and debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome that has rotted his peanut-sized brain. The Stephen Miller of it all is quite the interesting development because he continues to gain power and influence over this administration, but one thing is clear, Donald Trump does not like being overshadowed. And that is what we have recently seen with the response to his failing immigration plan. Donald Trump is trying to pull back in a moment in which he understands that he is politically unpopular with these moves. And what does Stephen Miller do? He goes over his head. The policy that Donald Trump reversed on, saying, no, we're not going to actually be going into hotels. We're not going to be going to farms, snatching people out, doing hard work in their communities. Stephen Miller has decided, actually, Donald, we are going to do that because, of course, Stephen Miller decided that he is a sick and vile person. So, if this continues to be a problem, if Trump continues to be embarrassed, as Senator Alex Padilla said, this authoritarian takeover fails, who does that fall on? Well, I think it's Stephen Miller. I think his weird, uncomfortable nature makes him the easy person to point the finger at, and it's going to be a pretty orange and angry finger, because more failures are on the way. And Jasmine Crockett detailed all of those, talking about Donald Trump's domestic agenda in this clip right here.
Like, at the end of the day, would you rather have a tax bill that may be $5, less that you're normally keeping in your pockets, but you don't have this crazy random health care bill?
Right.
Probably so, right? Like, and the reality is that people are going to die. Listening to the stories of people that literally have only been able to live because of Medicaid, it's heartbreaking. And the fact that we're talking about rich people just keeping more money in their pockets while literally other people are going to die, it sounds anti-American and definitely sounds anti-patriotic.
So one of the things that generally, when I've covered big bills in domestic policy in D.C., there's this idea of like the Senate is like the cooling saucer, and that, and that usually things come back from the Senate like more moderate, but both on the left and the right. That is generally the way things go.
Yes.
It seems to me like Ron Johnson and the sort of right-wing faction in the Senate is actually pushing to make this bill more aggressive on the cuts side. And I'm wondering if you were anticipating that, or if you thought you were expecting a more moderate bill.
No, I was expecting the Senate to fix everything. I mean, I was expecting it still to come back as a bad bill, but we're talking about
You thought it would get better.
Correct. I thought it would get better. We're talking about a bill that only made it through the House by one vote.
Right.
One vote. So literally it's like two people went AWOL, right? And another two Republicans voted with the Dems, and then another one just said, listen, I'm just going to white light this or, vote present.
Yeah.
And so I expected in the Senate, especially because think about it this way. Our congressional districts are approximately 766,000 people. And so literally there are some Republicans that don't have any hospitals whatsoever in their districts. But then you start talking about the Senate, every single state senator has hospitals. And when you start to talk about rural hospitals possibly shutting down because they don't have enough funding, because you're now cutting this Medicaid funding and they can't supplement because they don't have all these other people coming in with, say, private insurance, I thought the senators would say, listen, we can't do this.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that, because one of the things, my understanding, again, the details here get a little complicated, but there's this mechanism called the provider tax, which actually would hurt hospitals.
Yeah.
Let's sort of do the short version that way. They're trying to squeeze more revenue. My feeling always, when I used to cover Congress day in, day out, was that the hospitals were big interest groups.
They are.
They will drop money on your head if they don't like it. They will be up in your office.
Yes.
Where are the hospitals? Honestly, it's wild to me that they have not shown up in a big way.
I don't know.
To fight this bill.
I have no idea. I mean, it's kind of like you saw the farmers, right? Like when we were going through that, like, continuing resolution, the farmers were like, wait a minute. Like, they showed up, like the Farm Bureau was like, we are here, right? And so it is odd because the hospital lobby is a really big lobby. And a lot of people probably think of lobbies and they think, oh, you're going to be the antithesis of me. But when you're talking about rural America, like, I lived in East Texas. Let me tell you, hospitals are shutting down. And in rural America, you don't have as many providers either. And so literally, if you have this specialized cancer, you can't stay at home. You've got to go somewhere else because there's no one that knows about the help that you need. So it is really odd. And I tell you this, that there's going to be more hurt that comes to red states than blue states. Blue states can actually take in a lot of this, not to say that they should and not to say that it's right, but like it will be
disproportionately red states will get hurt by the Medicaid cuts in both these versions of the bill.
Yes, absolutely.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who is from the state of Texas, thanks so much for your time.
Donald Trump's promise on the campaign trail was that he'd make your life easier. And fundamentally, his presidency has been everything but that. Lives have been more chaotic. The nonsense of the day-to-day Trump stories isn't just an imposition in and of itself. Those stories are real and they hurt you. The tweets aren't just mean, they're causing potential recessions, they're causing potential wars. Donald Trump, through his own dementing brain, is interfering with your life and making you less free. Whether it's with his budget or his bleats, it is a problem that we will continue to call out on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. I've also linked my latest and first post on Substack. I hope you subscribe. It really does mean a lot when you support the Substack over there. And until next time, I'll see you soon.